Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time for another workout. Today was dynamic effort squat and deadlift day, and this is going to be a redunculously long workout. It's going to be really long. And in fact, I'm voicing over after I've just uploaded the squatting and deadlifting and taken just a short break to do that before I even do the box jumps. So I haven't even done those yet, and I'll do those and then get those into the workout. But speed squats went good today. As I said last time, I went ahead and I went over to 12 doubles because I feel like it gives me more practice getting set up, more practice kind of getting that mobility and speed down than doing 10 sets of 3. Plus, I get so much volume between the speed pulls and then the box jumps that this actually works quite well because it still gives me 24 speed squat reps. Me 20 speed pulls and then something like up to 30 box jumps depending on how many I do weighted. So it's a lot of work, guys. It's a lot of work. And I always start off the first couple sets a little bit slow. It feels like I need to get into my groove, but I actually do these with an empty bar. Then I go to the bands and a plate. And they're coming along well, though. I feel like this is really helping me get into that tight low position at the bottom. I'm getting that wider stance. Getting more explosive at these now. Right, we're getting more explosive now that we've got our percentages worked out better. And see, that's setting it up. Now it starts getting faster, getting good speed. Learning to keep that torso upright with that heavy lockout. And so I'm training myself to do that with all the various accommodating resistance. And that's something I think is going to really, really help me with my squats moving forward. And that was really the secret to me hitting that 62-pound box squat PR in between the cycles there of the training. Was all that work helped me with the top. Now I know that I've got to keep bringing up my quads. I think you guys are going to notice as I approach the camera each time, the quad work is paying off. Like all the additional quad work is making my quads bigger, but we're also training that heavy, heavy lockout work. And for people to understand what 130 pounds of band tension feels like, this is for speed work, right? I only have, I think, 232 on the bar there, 232, because that's a 52-pound bar. So you'll get people who don't do speed work or bands who might be weaker lifters. They might look at that and go, well, I think I could do that. And it's like, well, what's your squat? And they'll be like, well, I squat 350. You can't do this. Like that's where people need to understand the difference. If your max all-out back squat is like 350 and you get under this, you might not be able to lock out both reps. So just perspective there. Because you got to remember, this is coming off of a deep box with 130 pounds of band tension. And it seems counterintuitive, but people who haven't trained with heavy, heavy bands do not understand. They are a unique beast. But the upside, that band tension, fighting against it, I'm learning to keep that chest upright more, the torso more upright, especially doing these with a high bar. And I think that's going to carry over to being able to maintain a more upright torso on the heavy squats. Well, why does that matter? Well, because as my quads get stronger and I get better at getting the stance out wider, what does that translate to? Translates to no quad weakness forcing me to lean forward near the top because my quads can lock me out. The wider stance, and this is what people don't understand, the wider stance is the solution to the long femur issue. You always see these guys, well, I have to do this because of my long femurs. And it's like, why don't you just learn to do like a sumo stance? Build your mobility up and practice that. Because that will change your moment arms in such a way that the center of gravity of the barbell is way further back and it'll let you stay more upright. I don't think the excessive forward lean with a low bar is a solution to long femurs. Just my opinion. I think you should learn to high bar with a really wide stance because femur relief becomes far, far less critical at that point. But in my case, I have shorter femurs. I'm built to squat. Like I have long torso, short femurs. Right? I have the upper body of a really tall person because I have my dad's torso and my mom's family is shorter, but that's shorter legs. So for me, I have relatively short femurs with a long torso. Well, that means I'm built to squat because I also have long arms. So it gives me great leverages for that. So in my case, learning to use those leverages, which basically means at this point I just need to build enough back strength and thoracic strength to handle heavy weights. And that gets done by doing the accommodation. So when I start ramping up, the goal will be to be able to do with chain work like 600 pounds on the lockout coming up in the next couple of phases of my training. Because we did that before, right? We got up to 510 worth of, with 100 pounds of chains being on the top, with just over 400 pounds at the bottom, and did what? Built up, and then when I got raw, I did 502. So we do the same thing building up. So we train the upper back and the abs and the core to handle the heavier weight by using the heavy chains on the max work and even all this accommodating resistance for speed work. Train myself to get the wider stance with the wide stance box squats and the sumo pulls and everything else. So we build all that mobility, then I do separate supplemental work to make sure my quads get bigger and thicker, so that my entire quad, top to bottom, particularly that ability at the bottom, like that deep knee bend. And if we build that up, guess what? Then my quads will be strong enough to push up eventually 600. And I need to have the torso to be able to maintain it upright without that forward lean. Now, the first rep on my speed pulls today, I cut it off in the middle. Why? Because I don't want it going into a gym fails. I set my farmer's walks handles a little too far back onto the bands, and then I rolled the bar way too close to the uprights. It was like a ½ inch from the uprights. So when I got to the lockout, when I locked back a bit, I got pulled up against the uprights. Like I bumped them and then pulled backwards, and the bar was pulling against the uprights with the bands, and I managed to set it back down, and then I lost my balance and had to grab one of the uprights. So after I set it down there, I grabbed an upright. I just don't want it going into a gym fail video, because people tend to do that silly stuff. And for me, it was setting up my first rep a little bit unbalanced with the barbell. Right, so I slid the farmer's walk handles a little further down so they weren't laying on top of the bands at all. So they're just on the edge there. And then everything went good for the next 19 singles. Everything was good. But the beauty for me is that at least I was able to hold that much weight at the top. You know, with the bands jerking down, I was able to hold for several seconds against a hook grip, over 400 pounds of total weight with bands jerking me down, and it had no issues. Now, I did notice my thumbs are a little tender after the 20th rep, but there's no real blistering. The skin is fine. They're just a little tender, and that probably impacted it a lot on the first real rep. But that's the thing you've got to remember. Sometimes when you're forced to do a setup like this, occasionally you've got to be careful with your setups. Got to watch this stuff because things happen, but you know, no injuries. Because I just, as I set it down, I realized I lost a little bit of balance, and I grabbed the upright so that I didn't fall down. So I didn't fall down, but I don't need me stumbling and it going into a gym fail. So all you guys also see, because the question always comes up, people are like, you don't have farmer's walks handles. Well, there you are. You can see them down there. They're those Titan brand mini ones, and I run up and down my hallway. So I left my farmer's walk set up, because I'm going to do some of those later today, and I had them set up already, and I didn't need the plates, so I just rolled them over and laid them down to make sure the front of my rack stays down, just in case. I had the back end bolted down, but it was an issue of I didn't have the proper bits to drill the holes through this steel for some reason, and so I wasn't able to drill the fronts as easy, because they don't come with pre-drilled holes in the bottom. You don't have the pre-drilled holes in the bottom, so it just makes my life easier to just do it this way. And it's not enough tension. Like when I do speed squats, they stay down. But these have so much more tension because of the way that bands are set up on the deadlifts, that they do lift a little bit and it pulls the rack back. So we just want to avoid that. We want to avoid it because I don't have hooks set up on a platform. I've built my own platform, and it doesn't have steel through it. But a lot of them have pegs for that. But the speed pulls went good. Other than that first one, the speed pulls went really good. They went great. Happy with them. No problems other than the first rep. So we did 20 of them today. And the beauty is that it keeps working my hook grip. And I've been doing that supplemental grip work a little bit. And I think that's going to be critical too, because we know that grip strength was a little bit of an issue last time. And general fatigue. I also had some other friends who do this who are like, I think all the conditioning work you're doing may have caused a little extra fatigue, and that's probably what happened with your deadlift. And they're probably right, and I would generally agree. But what are we about on this channel? as far as our training goes. We're about not making excuses. We can say these things and justify it, and it can be very true, but we don't use it to make an excuse. We use it to say, okay, I have to do better. Okay. Yes, the fatigue probably matters, but I'm going to keep doing the conditioning work, and I'm probably going to add a little bit more slowly over time. So if that's the case, that fatigue is going to be there. So what do I need to do in my training to make sure I don't have weak links when I'm fatigued, so that we can keep getting stronger on the maxes? Because it doesn't matter if you're fatigued, we're still going to have to hit maxes every single week. I'm still going to have to do the max effort work. And if the fatigue is causing my grip to be a slight issue, then I need my grip to be stronger. I need to do a little bit of extra grip specialization, because if the fatigue is going to make my grip weaker, I need the post-fatigue weakness in my grip to still be strong enough after I have lost a certain amount of it to continue to hit the maxes. So we need to be able to train around all of it, right? And that's the whole point. The system of training has to continue to flow in such a way that we can continue to progress in spite of all of that. Everything has to be well-rounded. We have to get rid of our weakest weak links. And if we have weak links that come out when we're fatigued, they're still a weak link. We just see them at a lighter weight than we would if we were not fatigued. Okay? So if anything, that fatigue tells me what I need to work. Tells me what I need to work. Now, obviously, I have other muscular weaknesses that are keeping my deadlift from being where it needs to be, right? We have other weaknesses, and we need to address those. We address hypertrophy in the different muscles. And, I mean, realistically, looking today, my hypertrophy is coming along. It is coming along. Because if some people will look at me lately and say, oh, you look like you've lost fat, or you look like this or that. I'm the same body weight. Even since adding all the milk in, I only picked up 2 pounds of weight from being full keto to adding a bunch of milk. 2 pounds. Well, that's just water at that point. It was only 2 pounds, and then it stayed. It took 1 to 2 days to go up, and then it has stayed there. I have literally weighed exactly within half a pound the same weight every day for the last week on the scale. And I'm still within 5 pounds of what I weighed in December. So it's just recomposition. It's recomposition, slowly but surely. Slowly but surely. And that's all we can do, and try to stay hydrated. That's all. People bring up the loose skin. It's like, well, as I get leaner, the fat adhering to the loose skin will get thinner, and that will help. I have to stay hydrated, and that will help. Okay? And that's one of the perks, one benefit I have of not doing the silly bodybuilding gig or caring about that stuff. One advantage I think I'm going to have in the long term is because I don't tan and I'm pale and all that. I'm not going to have the skin wrinkling issues as a result of that. So I'm hoping the fact that I don't do that will eventually make that skin tighten up. But it always comes up, people will say, why don't you get surgery? It's expensive and it would take me out of training. Like, no, it would affect my training. That could derail my entire lifestyle. It would cost enormous sums of money for something that is going to derail my life purely for an aesthetic purpose. To me, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. You know, and it doesn't matter that people say, well, your loose skin means you might not have credibility. Well, anyone who says that is a moron. Anyone who honestly thinks that, they're not intelligent enough to follow my channel, and they're not serious about their goals. I don't need them. And that's what people have to remember. I don't need them. Besides, I'm running a multi-phase business at this point. That's one reason some of the stuff I'm doing is scaled back a little bit on YouTube. I run more than one business at this point, so it just doesn't matter. And as long as I continue to recomp and continue to get stronger as I get older, this channel will grow. It'll grow, and it'll make more revenue and get more views and more followers, and more people will want me to coach them, and more people will want programs written who eventually might pay higher premiums just to get in the rotation because they're fans and they can afford it. So I'm not really worried about it. All I have to focus on is continuing to make progress. So I don't worry about stuff like that. I'm worried about, can I gain muscle? Can I get a little bit leaner? Can I get stronger? Can I stay healthy? Can I improve my fitness? And just keep training day after day after day. That's what matters. Right? You can't worry about this other silly stuff. Like, seriously, dude, if you're a straight male and you're that worried about your appearance, I don't know, man, go get a therapist. Get a therapist. Don't waste your money on surgery. The therapist is going to do a lot more for you. That'll be way more valuable to you. Right? Because there's no need to worry about. There's no benefit in obsessing over that. It's not going to help you. It's not going to make you fitter or healthier. It doesn't matter. And nobody cares other than a bunch of dudes on the internet. Women don't care. Right? They don't care. Why should you care? All right, on to box jumps. I did 8 sets of 3 today. That felt like enough. It felt like enough with all the speed work. I didn't need to do 10 sets. And I think at a certain point we risk losing speed. And people have to remember we are doing this for speed training, not necessarily volume. But what I did do, because I did 8 triples today, I focused on going ahead and standing up into a squat at the top. So basically doing a front squat at the end of it. Now, would under normal circumstances that have any real training effect? Probably not. Probably not. But in the case of doing it after an explosive jump, my quads have already hit upper threshold fibers. They've already hit upper threshold fibers. So there may be a mild training effect to it. There may be some actual training stimulus to it. I wouldn't rule it out. It's not really hard or a big deal to go ahead and just stand up at the top, because it's something I was looking at in my own footage, and I realized I haven't been doing that. And I'm like, well, if I'm already going to jump up there with the weight, I might as well go ahead and just go through a full squat and extension at the top, just for the extra mild training effect, because, hey, it does give me 24 extra little lightweight front squats done after I have hit upper threshold fibers from the jump. And because I've have some fatigue from the other work, there very well might be some actual metabolic fatigue accumulated. Does it matter in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. It probably is just metabolic conditioning at that point. And I'm doing so much of that anyways that, everything's going good. And as I've said before, I know people are like, well, why don't you show it? I'll eventually show it. I just don't want to do that many training vlogs every week yet. But I feel like as my channel, eventually as I wind down more current events, as I focus more on coaching and eventually program writing, I'll start doing that. And I'll probably start filming that almost every day as well, so that we get 6 vlogs. And then people can see again what I really do, and that's what will make this channel more about over time. It's going to be a transformation, though. It's going to be over time. I don't want to focus. Eventually, I don't want to care about anything going on in this goofy community, because quite frankly, the entire online fitness world is a big joke. It really is a big, goofy, ridiculous joke and clown show. And the majority of the people even giving advice literally don't know anything other than how to pin, trend, and starve themselves. And they literally know nothing else of value, and it's just a big circus act. So at a certain point, I'm going to just stop covering it and focus on just real training and getting people strong and jacked and athletic, right? All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. Hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.